Hello and good morning. This is a video about GitHub Actions. I have played with it yesterday and want to compare it, want to know which features it has. It's a pet peeve of mine to use CI tools, and I'm going to revert a real-life project over to GitHub Actions. I'm just going to share real short what this project is about, and just going to draw a diagram here. So this project actually has two CI pipelines. One is Travis CI, and the other one is GitLab CI, right? So what this does is basically on a schedule, right? On a schedule, I don't know, can I add text here? Like every hour, GitLab CI is triggered. And the script pretty simply, let's use something else here. Pretty simply checks if there is a new release of a JetBrains product, and if there is, it triggers a Travis build job, and the Travis build job is pulling the same data, and then is pushing a change to a GitHub repository. So there is a tool called Homebrew, and why did I come up with this? So Travis allowed me to have free runner minutes of free runs on macOS, while GitLab allowed me to have a faster schedule or a higher frequency schedule, so I could run stuff every hour instead of daily, because Travis just allows schedule runs that run daily. This check on the GitLab side is very cheap. It just takes like a minute on GitLab CI, and the changes on Travis take like a couple minutes to run, right? And we don't need to unnecessarily run stuff if there haven't been any new releases by JetBrains. So let's have a look at this tool. So this here is Travis CI and GitLab CI. You can see it just on GitLab CI runs yarn install, lib has update, and should be here. Oops. Let's just search for it. And so a run in GitLab CI should take about 30 seconds, run every hour, have a look whether there has been a new release, and trigger a build on Travis CI. Okay, so let's dive right into using GitHub Actions. The GitHub Actions has presented itself pretty nice. So when there is an empty project, let me just create a new repository. When there is yeah. Let's just go with Java and Apache license, whatever. Just that we have some files so that we see the normal interface. It has presented itself pretty nicely. So it usually detects which language your project is in. So, and gives you examples, and here just gives popular ones because we haven't selected language, but if we would have JavaScript code in there, it would give me more JavaScript examples. And now it gives me a simple workflow as well. And when you click set up this workflow, it basically goes into a file edit mode. This is what I have done here as well. So on the master branch, we already have our workflow that I created. And the if I go into edit mode, I will see the same view. But the onboarding has been pretty nice because they explain concepts to you, right? You're on the right-hand side. Or you have examples here. And you can also just start right away with setting up yourself. So let's go into edit mode. One thing that I noticed in the edit mode is you can have multiple workflows, and having a second workflow, you can switch to it. But on the other hand, the editor preview changes just shows what you've changed. So it's like the diff view, and it gives you a nice autocomplete on the syntax. So, and here it actually advertises control space trigger autocomplete. So the first thing, here's a documentation link. The first thing one is the question, how do my workflows run, right? And there's an interesting fact that you can schedule things. This is what we want, right? We want to run our workflow on a schedule. So we actually can have a look and see, okay, interesting. I can just use the cron syntax similar to GitLab. And but compared to GitLab, I can run a schedule once every 5 minutes. So not just like once an hour, and I can run it like every 5 minutes. And once I do that, so let's remove from push here, right? Actually, I thought it's a syntax error, but it runs every 13th minute, right? So, and I can use like open tools that are available like cron Guru. And let's say I want to just do something. The description is actually wrong. It runs on every 13th minute of every hour. So it would always run 13th behind, so after the hour. But this would run every 30 minutes, so like once an hour, right? So let's add that here. And here we can see the autocomplete, and there are a lot of events on when you can run things. And one event would be push. And I haven't figured out how just to say on every push, so I'm just going to use branches and say I want this to run this on every branch. It's like a glob syntax to filter on branches. You could also go on ignoring branches, these kind of things. And what's pretty interesting though is that you're able to define workflow events that are not necessarily tied to creation events. So you can define, or not necessarily to code-related events. So you can define events, for example, if somebody forks your project, right? Send you a notification when someone forks a project. One particular interesting example is every time you label something. So you could create workflows depending on labeling. So you could, if you have complex labeling or labels that contradict each other, you could run an easy check. Hey, no, you added this label, and you either write a comment onto your issue or pull request, or you just change the label. And a really, really good example for the GitHub workflow that they promote is pull request, right? So on a pull request, once it's created, I could run a workflow that checks if the person who has created it has signed like an NDA or like one of those committer agreements. which is pretty interesting. And I have certain events like I can run a thing every time a review is requested. Like I could send it to a Slack channel, do things outside of the normal GitHub notifications. And this allows me to use basically webhooks of GitHub without necessarily needing to set up stuff on my own, right? Like setting up a service that listens for them. I can just define triggers here. Okay. Yeah, every time there's a new release, I could automatically go and close all the issues that have been created with this release, right? So this is pretty interesting stuff. Let's go with the events here, with the on push and the schedule one. And the thing is, oh, shoot, I have to stop the recording. Stop video. More, stop recording. Okay, back. So this workflow is defined, runs on every branch, on pushing every branch, and on a schedule. I can now define jobs. There are multiple jobs, and these jobs are pretty, I can run each job on a different operating system. So here are examples, right? macOS latest, or I can define version, and I can run on the different types of machines. I could also define a matrix, but I want to run my stuff on macOS, so I'm just saying, I want to run this on macOS. These jobs are isolated from each other, and you have one way to communicate between them is via artifacts. More about that later. So, and here we can see steps. Steps are actually like the individual build steps that happen within the job, and these are reusable, right? So I can create actions. So I could create reusable actions, which I actually do later in this thing. One interesting thing though is I can give steps IDs in order to use output from steps, and I also can give them a name and just say give a human readable name, which will then be shown in the log instead of just the step action name or the step action ID. Okay, so let's have a look. So this is everything that happens now. Run the bot, and this will actually allow me to define run the bot, start commit, creating actions and version, and let's name this chat bot. Boop, and propose file change, move merge CI systems into actions. Okay, pull request, right? Okay. So if we go on to the Actions tab, we should see that there is an action triggered. We can see there's the setup of the bot, checking out the latest version. This is our human readable description. And let's reload the page. We can see the log, what happened when checking out, and sorry. And we can see, okay, this is the command we run, the -minus version. So the job logs are searchable. So if I search here, I can search logs. And there are some other interesting features to the job. So job logs themselves. Yeah, can view timestamps, ebook. Okay. Now I'm going to cheat a bit and basically do the thing that people do in cooking shows. I have worked on an MR yesterday that also moves everything to the GitHub Actions. And I'm just going to look at the diff review. So best is we are just going to open the YAML file so that we can talk about it, and then we look into the different files. So basically, it's the same definition here. We run it on master and so on, and on the cron job, and we are going to we're just defining some environment variables and have the actions. So the first actions is a checkout, right? The second action is a cache, because every time we check against new versions, we save the result of that in a cache, so that if we run the job a second time, we can actually see if there's a diff and if we need to run the full script. The next action is, and it just caches a path called temp. The next action is an action which we have defined privately. So we will dig into that in a second. This action is actually just, does the check. Do we need to run the full pipeline? If we do, it sets a variable, which I can check with steps, check if for run outputs run full. So this is just the name of the action. And this is the name of the output of the action. And if that outputs yes, we are going to set like all these variables and run our actual update script. So what's interesting here is that in the settings you can define secrets. And you can see there's no way to see a secret once after you edit it. But this is how you use it, right? So you just say, okay, this is the secret, the RP token, the GitHub RP token that I want to use, once I have the push event. And you just use that. This will do everything that's needed. Let's have a look into that merge request here. It has a lot of changes because it adds a lot of files. So this is the action. Let's have a look at the actions. So I just put the action into the same folder, call it check if full run. And actions are defined by an action YAML. And you can either define an action to be a JavaScript file or a Docker file, a Docker container which you just execute. And you can define inputs and outputs. Here I define the one output, and there's a special syntax to set outputs. And every input that you give, you can say whether it's required or not, will be actually piped into the action. And other than that, I just added some dependencies. I added them directly to the repository so that I don't have to run yarn install or npm install to get those dependencies, and that the action is ready right away. I can also define under which environment it runs. So this is node 12. One interesting thing is you can only run, you can run all the node actions on macOS, Windows, and the Linux environments. You cannot run Docker actions under the macOS environment. I don't know about Windows, but I assume it's also a limitation of that. So the action is actually pretty simple, just going over that really quickly. It gets the previous file from the temp folder, which we saved with the cache, gets the latest from the internet, compares them both, and if they are equal, it doesn't trigger anything, and if they are not equal, so if a full build should happen, we just use core set output run full yes, and so in that case it will just run the rest of the build pipeline. So what's interesting about this is like they have defined several packages on the JavaScript side that are supposed to help you interact with GitHub, or that are supposed to interact like with the CI system. And so these are a few helpers: set output, get input, warning to send special commands to the actions, which in the end are just like a certain log file. But let's look into the job log to see what I'm talking about. Here you can see that what happens. Checking out code, it loads the previous cache, right? Here we can actually see that special syntax that they use. So they set a cache to true, so I actually could use whether the cache has been hit as a condition. It checks whether an output, it checks whether an update is necessary, and it wasn't necessary. And these are warnings that I throw from within the code. And you can see that this special warning syntax is also parsed and shown me here. So I could directly see, okay, this is what's going on. You can see that this part is skipped, no explanation though. And then it's uploading the cache again. It's uploaded to the cache again, and the job is completed. What's interesting with these actions, if I go back to the workflows and edit it, there are some actions like cache and so on, and there are some caveats that I have run into. So we have this condition here that checks if a job is run, right? And say I want to be a good citizen and I want to do, or I have different jobs. You can only access the outputs of a job within the same job. So if we have a second job, and we runs on Ubuntu latest, right? And we have step here, and name is example step. I cannot access these. I cannot access this previous step, or the step from the other, the output from the other job. So these jobs are independent from each other. At the moment, they also would run in parallel, so they have like a dark-like syntax. So you can say it depends on the check stage, and the only way that I have found you can currently communicate between jobs is that you use artifact, and there is the upload artifact job and the download artifact job. So you just define a path that's uploaded, and you define a path that is downloaded to download an artifact. What's interesting at the moment, there is a limitation that artifacts can just be used within the same workflow pipeline. So that means if I run a pipeline and upload an artifact, I cannot use that in a subsequent pipeline. Which is a limitation why I needed to use caches here. But they explained, because those actions are actually reusable, you could just upload something to S3 and download it, or you basically, if you don't trust the GitHub cache for whatever reason, or the artifacts, you want to put your artifacts somewhere else, you can just upload them somewhere else, basically, because these actions can do anything. And this actually brings me to a final point here is we have a lot of actions available. So you can see there's a cache action, good for caching dependencies, and we can search for certain things. So for example, if I search for S3, you can see there are a lot of actions, and some of them might even be official actions, or they are from other users. So I think this is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, because the quality and the maintainability of all these actions is a bit uncertain. I remember this from when I was using Worker, where you also had steps defined that you could use, that maintaining those was a bit of a pain and you didn't know which ones were maintained, and you also need to trust the actions, right? And if you use a Docker action, how do we ensure that this Docker container is not vulnerable, or that they didn't use a Docker container that is vulnerable? So you always can use the local actions in a professional context, but using the official actions from GitHub. Or maybe there are other providers will hop on, but I think maintaining actions is a slippery slope kind of thing, right? It's a hard thing. It's easy to get the actions out there, but once you have like a really crazy ecosystem, you can see, right? We have S3 backup, S3 sync, AWS S3 sync, update S3, AWS S3 sync action. So we have a lot of actions here already that do the same thing. Same for Docker, right? So if you publish things to Docker, Docker push, Docker publish Docker, pretty interesting. But if you put in some time and maintain those actions by yourself, I think it can be really valuable to define reusable things between projects and reusable things within workflows in the same repository, right? So I could define different triggers with different actions. The onboarding has been rather quickly. I was able to define like pipelines really quick. I spent most of the time writing this action, which is not really needed. And what's pretty interesting to me is that, so this is an example when the script ran completely. So even the expensive part of the script, right? And what's interesting to me, it took 2 minutes and 6 seconds, or in total it took like 2 minutes and 12 seconds. And if I look at Travis CI competitor, it often, let's look at the master branch. Where is the master branch? Here's the master branch. It takes 3.5 minutes, and it does less at the moment. So it's about a minute faster than Travis for my use case. And even those 26 seconds here, like the short script, which I have currently running on GitLab CI, it just feels snappier at the moment. Yeah, I think this is my first deep dive into this. If there are questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I will keep this video running and basically migrate the script in the rest of this video. So have fun seeing it working. Okay, I'm going back to that branch because that branch just should be more interesting. Okay, let's go to the other branch. Because after I played around with the action, I actually found out I don't need the action. It was interesting to see the action, but it created a lot of headache, and there's a lot of logic involved, and I don't need that because the script runs just 2 minutes, and if I run it once an hour, whether something runs 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and it's free for open projects, so I don't really care, right? So I'm just going to go in and edit this file and copy out the update mechanism. So let's see what is here. The if step can be removed. And I can change the shell. Oops. Every first and 30th minute. So this will run every 45. Let's just run it once an hour. That should be enough. Well, it actually happens. Nah, let us just run like every half hour. Where does the contact go? I think we can run it every half hour. So, and be a bit mindful of days in the week. So just run it 1 to 5, like every half hour from Monday to Friday. And, run it every second hour on every 4 hours on the weekend. Okay, it runs every 30 minutes on the, yeah. There's a comma here. I think Sunday is 0. Yep. So this runs every 30 minutes within the week and every 4th hour on the weekends. Branches, every branch, run the update mechanism, jobs, JetBrains passport, using the name here. Let's make the name the best thing. For consistency, I can remove that. And that's it. That should be it. Start commit. Consolidate. Migrate actions script over migrate Travis. Okay. JetBrains castboard, every branch, and so on. We have the actions here. We have now. We can see that Travis still runs. And I'm just going to merge the thing, delete branch. Yep. So that's it. Actions. Yeah, you can see, top level, this only has the master branch. You can see that this happened on push. And so in 5 minutes, it's also supposed to happen on schedule. So we'll see if that works. And if it works properly, so once it created the first actual merge request, I will disable Travis for now. Settings, build push branches, build push pull request, cron jobs. Just disable everything, so it shouldn't run automatically, right? And transport pipelines. And I'm also disabling the scheduling. I'm just disabling it for now so that I'm able to verify that everything works with the new workflow. Once JetBrains releases a new product. Okay. Let's see.